Her scream froze the entire street. Not the usual whimper or cry a child lets out when they trip or scratch a knee. This was different. It was sharp, raw, and it didn't stop. I dropped my grocery bags in the driveway and ran. Fast. Kinsley was hunched over the mailbox at the corner of our lawn, her tiny wheelchair tilted sideways, her left hand stuck, wedged painfully inside the metal flap. Blood was already trickling down her wrist, staining the white of her school uniform. And just a few feet away, arms folded and eyes cold, stood Peggy Whitmore. Not even pretending to help. Not even flinching. She shouldn't be touching federal property, she muttered. That's all she said. No regret. No panic. Just that, like my 9-year-old disabled daughter somehow deserved it. I screamed at her. My voice cracked as I yanked Kinsley's hand free. She sobbed into my chest, trembling. A small piece of yellow paper, the school fundraiser flyer, lay torn on the ground, barely visible under Peggy's polished heel. The neighbors watched from their porches. Some whispered. Some turned away. Nobody moved. And that's when I realized this wasn't just a misunderstanding. This wasn't just another day in the neighborhood. It was war. A quiet war wrapped in manicured lawns, bake sales, and HOA letters, and my daughter had just been caught in the crossfire. I didn't know it then, but that single flyer, that harmless little piece of paper, would tear our entire neighborhood apart. Forever. 6 months before the scream that changed everything, I remember standing in front of our new home, holding the keys in one hand and my daughter's hand in the other. It was a sunny Tuesday. The air smelled like fresh mulch and new beginnings. Kinsley, I said, kneeling beside her wheelchair, this is it, our new start. She gave me a tired smile, the kind of smile only kids like her know how to give. Brave but worn. Hopeful but careful. Kinsley was born with spina bifida. Doctors said she might not walk, might not talk, might not even survive. But she did, and she did it her way. A fighter. A light. We had just come from a noisy apartment complex in the city where the elevators barely worked and neighbors banged on the ceiling if she laughed too loud. When I landed a remote job as a billing coordinator for a healthcare network, I knew it was time to get out. Somewhere with sidewalks, playgrounds, quiet. The neighborhood seemed perfect. A tight-knit community called Larkridge Estates. Tree-lined streets, trimmed hedges, a local newsletter that went out every Sunday. Everyone waved, smiled, called me ma'am. It felt like peace. We met Peggy Whitmore the first week. She rang our doorbell at 6:30 a.m. on a Saturday. Hi there, she chirped. I'm Margaret, but folks call me Peggy. HOA Vice Chair. Just wanted to bring by the welcome packet. She handed me a binder thick enough to stop a bullet. It had rules about lawn care, trash schedules, and mailbox paint colors. I smiled politely. Thanks, that's very... Her eyes shifted down to Kinsley's chair behind me. Oh, I didn't know. She paused. I waited. I didn't know you had a child with special needs. There was a long silence. Kinsley just stared at her quietly. I reached down and gently closed the door. For the next few weeks, things felt okay. Kinsley made chalk drawings on the driveway. We baked cookies and handed them to neighbors. We joined the block's group chat. Peggy posted, reminders there are almost daily noise limits, pet leash warnings, lawn length violations. Nothing directed at us, though. Not yet. Still, there was this energy. Whenever Kinsley giggled too loud, Peggy's curtains moved. Whenever her wheelchair left faint tracks in the sidewalk, we'd find a fresh chalk circle around them the next morning. I brushed it off, told myself I was being sensitive. Kinsley didn't complain. She was busy with school, excited about the upcoming book drive fundraiser. She'd started designing her own flyers, bright colors, big letters, little smiley faces in every corner. She asked if we could hand them out together, maybe go door to door on Sunday. I remember thinking how far we'd come. After years of hospital rooms, therapy sessions, judgmental stares, my daughter was finally ready to show the world her spark. And I believed, foolishly, that this neighborhood would be kind enough to receive it. I believed wrong. It started with a note, not a knock, not a conversation, just a folded slip of paper taped to our front door. No signature. No warmth. Please ensure your daughter's wheelchair does not scratch or dirty the community sidewalk tiles. HOA maintenance is not responsible for these marks. I stared at it for a full minute. Not angry, just stunned. It wasn't even true. Kinsley's chair had soft rubber wheels, and even if there were marks, they'd wash away with the next rain. I walked inside and tossed it in the trash. Who was it from? Kinsley asked. No one important, I lied, but I knew who. Peggy. A few days later, another note showed up. This one in our mailbox, again unsigned, but printed in the same flowery cursive. As a friendly reminder, HOA policy discourages chalk drawings on driveways as they may reduce curb appeal. Kinsley's chalk box was sitting by the porch. She had just finished drawing a giant sunflower with welcome neighbors scrawled across the bricks. She saw the note before I could hide it. Did I do something bad, Mom? She asked, eyes wide. I knelt beside her. No, baby. You made art. Some people just don't understand what joy looks like. The next week, we received an official email from the HOA. Your home has been flagged for minor compliance issues. Driveway presentation, sidewalk integrity, mailbox color fading. Kindly resolve these items within 10 business days to avoid further action. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about chalk, or wheels, or mailboxes. This was targeted, and it was getting organized. I attended the next HOA meeting out of sheer instinct. It was held in a cozy little community hall down the street. Coffee, donuts, fake smiles. Peggy was there, of course, seated right beside Tom DeVille, the HOA president, a portly man with a forced laugh and the handshake of a cold fish. Ah, you must be Elena. Welcome, welcome, he said, too loudly, patting me on the back like I was a lost child. Peggy gave a thin smile. We were just reviewing the monthly incident reports. Seems like you've been busy. I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled, just trying to get to know the neighborhood. I said, good, Peggy replied, because rules are what keep this place peaceful. The meeting went on landscaping, garage sales, barking dogs. But I didn't hear any of it. I just sat there, hands clenched in my lap, staring at the printed complaint folder in Peggy's arms. My name was on the spine. She had made a file on us. Back at home, I stood on our porch for a long time, watching the street. Every movement behind curtains, every subtle glance. And that night, as I helped Kinsley into bed, she whispered something I'll never forget. Mom, do you think Miss Peggy doesn't like me because I'm different? It shattered me. I held her tight, kissed her forehead, and told her what any mother would. No, baby. She doesn't like you because you shine too bright for someone so dull. But deep down I knew. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. From that day on, it was as if someone had turned a switch. I'd wake up each morning to find new HOA notices tucked under our door, one for excessively loud bird feeders, another for wheelchair ramp lacking aesthetic uniformity. Yes, you heard that right. Aesthetic uniformity. One afternoon, we came home from Kinsley's physical therapy appointment and found a neon orange sticker slapped across our front window. Notice of noncompliance. Urgent attention required. Kinsley read it out loud before I could pull her away. She looked up at me, her voice tight. Are we doing something wrong, Mommy? No, I said through clenched teeth, tearing the sticker down. We're just living near someone who doesn't know how to mind their own business. Peggy, meanwhile, had somehow evolved from HOA vice chair to self-appointed sheriff of the neighborhood. She walked the street every morning at 6 a.m., clipboard in hand, stopping at every yard with a measuring tape, squinting at mailboxes and porch plants like she was hunting contraband. She never looked at us. But she never missed us, either. Our trash cans? Placed 6 inches too far from the curb. Our garden gnome? Visual clutter. Kinsley's wind chimes? Audible disruption. It became a game of control, one I wasn't prepared for, but one I refused to lose. Still, I kept my head down. Smiled at neighbors, attended every HOA meeting. I even repainted the mailbox just to prove a point. But inside, I started keeping a journal, a record of everything. Every note, every fine, every interaction. And then it escalated. One morning, I walked outside to water the plants and found our little flower bed crushed. Not trampled, ripped up, tulips uprooted, soil kicked out, Kinsley's painted garden signs broken and scattered. I stood there frozen. Kinsley rolled up beside me, gasped, and then whispered, "She did it. I know she did." I wanted to tell her it could have been anyone, that we shouldn't assume. But I couldn't lie to her anymore. Later that week, I caught Peggy taking photos of our backyard from the street. I stepped outside. "Can I help you with something?" I asked. She smiled. "Oh no, dear. Just documenting code violations. You wouldn't believe how many infractions are overlooked these days." I walked right up to her and said, "She's a child. She just wants to live. That's all." Peggy's smile dropped. "She's not the only one who lives here," she snapped. "This community has standards. You might feel entitled to sympathy, but sympathy doesn't replace responsibility." I turned around without a word and went inside. That night, I filed a formal complaint with the HOA, complete with photos, timestamps, and excerpts from my journal. The response? "We appreciate your concern. At this time, no action will be taken. Please continue to observe community standards. In other words, shut up and follow the rules." I felt like I was losing my mind. Was I imagining it all? Was I being overly sensitive? But then came the tipping point. One of the neighbors, a quiet, older woman named Rita, who always waved at Kinsley, stopped me one evening. She looked nervous, like she was afraid of being seen talking to me. "I thought you should know," she whispered. "Peggy's trying to get you removed from the community directory. She says you've brought too much disruption. She's rallying votes." I stared at her, stunned. "She says you're a bad example for new residents," Rita added, "because of all the attention your daughter brings." I don't remember what I said. I think I just nodded, thanked her, and walked away. But that night, as Kinsley slept and the house went quiet, I opened my laptop and created a digital folder. Peggy Whitmore, documentation. I moved every photo, every scan notice, every HOA email into it. Because I knew the next time she crossed a line, I'd be ready. It was supposed to be simple, sweet, harmless. Kinsley had spent 2 weeks designing the flyers herself, thick sheets of colored paper filled with hand-drawn stars, crooked letters, and little cartoon books with smiling faces. "Mom," she said, proudly holding one up, "I made 50. If everyone on the street gets one, maybe I'll win the class pizza party." Her school was running a book drive for underfunded classrooms. Whoever brought in the most books or donations would win. For most kids, it was just a fun contest. But for Kinsley, it was everything. A chance to participate, to feel normal, to belong. I offered to help her staple them. She refused. "I want them to be mine," she said. "Every single one." So we printed a few extras. I helped cut the corners round so nobody got a paper cut. And that Sunday, just after lunch, we went out to deliver them. It was sunny, one of those rare, peaceful afternoons. Kinsley rolled along the sidewalk with a basket of flyers in her lap, while I walked beside her, holding the extras. Most neighbors smiled when she approached. Some thanked her. One even gave her a small bag of books to donate. Then we reached the corner house, Peggy Whitmore's. I hesitated. "We can skip this one," I whispered. But Kinsley looked up at me, confused. "Why? She lives here too, doesn't she? What if she wants to help?" And that's the thing about children, especially children who've been through too much. They still believe in hope. They still believe that kindness wins. So I nodded. "Okay, just be careful." I stood a few feet back as Kinsley rolled up to the mailbox. It was one of those stiff metal types with a heavy top flap. She pulled out a flyer, folded it, and tried to gently slip it inside. But the flap wouldn't open all the way. She leaned forward, her small hand struggling with the lid. And that's when it happened. Peggy's front door flung open with a crack. Her voice tore across the yard like thunder. "What do you think you're doing?" Kinsley froze. I'm just," she stammered. "You're tampering with federal property." Peggy screamed. "That's a felony, you little delinquent." She stormed down the steps, moving faster than I'd ever seen her. I ran, but not fast enough. In one terrifying motion, Peggy yanked the mailbox flap down, right on top of Kinsley's hand. Slam. Kinsley's mouth opened, but no sound came out at first. Then, Mommy, I reached her in seconds. Her hand was pinned, crushed between the cold, rusted flap and the inner hinge. Blood oozed from beneath her fingers. Her face was pale, lips trembling, eyes wide with pain and terror. Let go of it. I screamed at Peggy, shoving her away and yanking the mailbox open. She stumbled back and crossed her arms, completely unfazed. This is what happens when people don't follow the law, she said coldly. My hands were shaking. Kinsley clutched her hand against her chest, sobbing. Jason Alvarez, our neighbor, came running out barefoot. What the hell happened? He yelled. She assaulted my daughter. I cried. Peggy scoffed. I defended my property. She was putting garbage in my mailbox. Jason pulled out his phone. I saw the whole thing. You touched that girl. I got part of it on my doorcam too. Peggy's face twitched. Just for a second. Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called 911. Paramedics checked Kinsley's hand. One of her fingers was bruised badly. Another possibly fractured. But what hurt more was the look on her face, a kind of silent betrayal. She hadn't cried like that in years. Not from pain, from shame. As the police questioned everyone, Peggy played her usual card. I was defending community property. I had no idea she'd get hurt. I thought she was vandalizing. And just like that, it was an unfortunate misunderstanding. No arrest, no charges, just a report, and a warning. I sat on the curb with Kinsley wrapped in a blanket beside me. She kept whispering the same thing. I didn't do anything wrong. And I kept saying, I know, baby. But deep down, I also knew something else. This wasn't an accident. It was a message. The doctors said Kinsley would heal. Hairline fracture, deep bruising, no permanent damage. But they weren't talking about her bones. They didn't see the way she sat in silence on the ride home. Didn't hear her whisper sorry every 10 minutes like she'd done something to deserve a crushed hand. Didn't watch her flinch every time the doorbell rang. That night, she didn't ask for her bedtime story. She didn't want her chalk, her coloring books, or her favorite soft blanket. She just stared at the ceiling and asked one question. Are we going to have to move again? I didn't answer right away because I wasn't sure. The next morning, a letter arrived in our mailbox. No return address. Stop using your daughter for attention. This neighborhood doesn't need your kind of drama. Kinsley didn't see it. I made sure she didn't. But I saw it. I saw everything now. I filed another formal complaint with the HOA. I attached medical records, witness statements, and even a copy of the doorbell footage Jason Alvarez had emailed me. The response? Thank you for your submission. Upon review, the HOA has determined that no official action will be taken against Mrs. Whitmore at this time. We encourage all residents to resolve disputes amicably and in good faith. Good faith? She assaulted my child, and they called it a dispute. A few days later, I noticed something missing from the neighborhood bulletin board. Kinsley's name had been removed from the list of participants in the school book drive. No pizza party invite. No mention at all. I called the school. They said the HOA had contacted them to say we'd violated federal mailbox law, and they were investigating potential misconduct. Peggy had filed a report. Kinsley came home that day with tears in her eyes. I was gonna win, she whispered. I worked so hard. I held her, but there was nothing I could say. Not without lying. Then came the final blow. A notice on our door. Final warning, repeated violations of community code. Trash bins. Sidewalk stains. Visual disorder due to medical equipment left visible on porch. They meant her wheelchair. That's when something inside me cracked. Not with rage. Not with revenge. With resolve. I sat at my desk that night and opened the folder I'd been building. Peggy Whitmore documentation. Photos. Voice memos. Emails. HOA correspondence. Jason sent me a signed statement. Rita, the elderly neighbor, offered hers too. A former resident who moved out last year messaged me anonymously. Said Peggy had done this before, pushed a young family out over unauthorized child behavior when their son with autism had a meltdown in public. She had a pattern, a history, and now she had a record. Meanwhile, Kinsley stopped going outside. She refused to roll her chair past the driveway. No more flyers, no more chalk, no more waving at neighbors. She'd become a ghost in her own home. And I couldn't let that be the end of her story. The final straw came one night, when I caught her sneaking into the kitchen with a black trash bag. "Whatcha doing, sweetie?" I asked gently. She looked up, eyes red, throwing away the flyers. "All of them." She nodded. "They're bad luck." I knelt beside her. "Those flyers aren't the problem. And you are not bad luck. But people hate me now," she said. "Even the nice ones stopped saying hi." And she was right. Neighbors I used to chat with now avoided eye contact. No one brought cookies. No one knocked to check on her after the incident. Everyone wanted to stay neutral. But neutrality in the face of cruelty is just quiet cruelty. That night, I kissed her forehead and made her a silent promise. "You won't fight this alone." Because if the system wouldn't protect her, then I would burn the whole thing down myself. I used to believe that good people always won, that if you followed the rules, treated others with kindness, and held your head high, justice would find its way to you. But justice wasn't knocking. So I went looking for it. The next morning, while Kinsley was still asleep, I emailed a local civil rights attorney, Amira Wallace. She specialized in housing discrimination and ADA violations. I told her everything. Sent her pictures, voice recordings, the medical report, the doorbell footage from Jason. She called me within an hour. "Elena," she said firmly, "you have a case." For the first time in weeks, I exhaled. That same day, Jason walked over with a fresh cup of coffee and an envelope. "I printed these," he said. "Screenshots from the neighborhood Facebook group. Posts from Peggy trashing you." She deleted them later, but not before I saved copies. He handed them over. One post read, "Why should we be forced to tiptoe around one family just because of a sob story?" Another one said, "It's not my fault she chose to parade her daughter around like some pity circus act." I nearly dropped the cup in my hands. Jason placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "She doesn't speak for all of us, but she did speak for some, and that was the real danger." I also contacted Rita, the elderly neighbor who had warned me before. She met me outside her garden, glancing around nervously. "She's scared of you now," Rita whispered. "You humiliated her when the police showed up." I didn't lay a finger on her, I replied. "I know," Rita nodded. "But people like Peggy, they're allergic to accountability." She signed a written witness statement confirming the pattern of bullying, not just toward us, but other vulnerable families over the years. "I should have spoken up sooner," she added. "You're speaking now," I told her. "That matters." Meanwhile, Kinsley stayed indoors, still afraid, still small, until one afternoon, she surprised me. She wheeled into the living room with a roll of yellow paper and her favorite markers. "I want to make one more flyer," she said softly. I knelt beside her. "What for?" "For me," she said, "to remind me I'm still here." She drew a picture of a garden, a mailbox, and herself, smiling, whole, holding a book. And at the bottom, she wrote in crooked purple letters, "People like me matter." I cried right there on the carpet. Amira filed a formal legal notice to the HOA. Violation of ADA guidelines. Negligent enforcement of policies. Enabling hostile conduct. Targeted harassment. She requested mediation, or we'd take it to court. And suddenly, the HOA board began squirming. Within a week, I was invited to the next official HOA meeting. This time, the tone was different. No fake smiles, no donuts, just tension. Peggy was already seated at the front, arms crossed, face tight with rage. Tom DeVille, the HOA president, cleared his throat awkwardly. Ms. Brooks, you've been granted 10 minutes to speak." I stood, my knees shaking, not from fear, but from the weight of truth. I opened my binder and began. "This is not a complaint. This is not a grudge. This is a record of neglect, cruelty, and cowardice, all hidden behind bylaws and shrub height violations. I read excerpts from the letters, showed the injury report, played the video clip of Kinsley's hand being slammed. Gasps filled the room. I handed out Jason's screenshots and Rita's statement. My voice never wavered. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a campaign. And if you don't act, I will. When I finished, there was silence. Then Jason stood up. She hurt that little girl. We all saw it. Some of us just looked away. Well, not anymore. One by one, neighbors began murmuring. Then speaking up. A mother stood and said her son had been shamed for having ADHD. A veteran in the back said he'd been fined for using a walker ramp on his porch. It wasn't just us. Peggy had ruled like a queen for too long. Tom shifted uncomfortably in his seat. We'll reconvene next week. For a vote? No, someone said. It was Rita. We vote now. The room was packed. Folding chairs lined the walls. People stood in the back, arms crossed, whispering behind raised hands. The air felt thick, not with heat, but with long-suppressed truth. Kinsley was beside me, hands still wrapped in a soft brace, holding her sketch pad in her lap. She hadn't said a word since we walked in, but she was there. And that was enough. Peggy sat stiffly at the front of the room like a queen on trial. Her pearls gleamed. Her posture screamed arrogance. But her eyes? They were nervous. Tom DeVille, flanked by two other HOA board members, tapped his pen anxiously. Let's proceed, he muttered. Ms. Brooks, you've made your case. Now, we allow Mrs. Whitmore a chance to respond. Peggy stood, smoothed her skirt, and flashed a tight smile. I believe this entire situation has been grossly exaggerated. I was simply enforcing the rules. The same rules that keep this community clean, safe, and structured. If we let everyone bend them because of personal circumstances, where does it end? She looked around the room like she expected applause. Silence. Her eyes darted to Tom, then back to me. I regret that the child was injured, but I acted in the moment. I didn't mean to cause harm. My fists clenched. Kinsley's grip on my arm tightened. Then why did you lie? A voice called out. Everyone turned. It was Jason. You told the police she was vandalizing your mailbox. You said she was a threat. Peggy's jaw tightened. I didn't say. I have it on video, Jason snapped. He stepped forward, holding up a flash drive. I gave it to the board. Already. Want me to play it again? Another neighbor stood up, a mom with twins. You filed a noise complaint because my kids sang in the front yard. Then a man in the corner. You fined me for putting my dad's wheelchair ramp on the front porch. Then Rita, you called my hospice nurse an unauthorized visitor. The dam was breaking. Peggy took a step back. This is turning into a witch hunt. No, Margaret, Tom finally spoke, his voice low. This is a reckoning. He stood and addressed the room. The HOA board has received formal legal notice of discriminatory conduct and failure to accommodate a disabled resident. We've reviewed the documents, the statements, and the footage. He looked directly at Peggy. Effective immediately, we are removing you from your position on the HOA board. Peggy gasped. You can't. I just did, Tom replied. The room exhaled, a collective release of years of fear. But he wasn't done. And a community-wide vote will now determine whether you are to be barred from holding any position of influence moving forward. We'll record it now, with full transparency. He passed out slips of paper, one per household. Peggy's hands shook as she watched people fill them out. One by one, they dropped them into the clear box at the front table. When it was my turn, I looked at her, not with hate, with something worse. Pity. She had bullied a child. And now she was crumbling. When the votes were tallied, Tom read the result. By a majority of 83%, the community votes to permanently ban Margaret Whitmore from all HOA leadership roles, effective immediately. Peggy stood. For a moment, she looked like she might say something, might apologize, defend, explode. Instead, she picked up her purse, looked down at Kinsley, and muttered, "You're lucky your mother's so dramatic." And then she walked out. Forever. The room erupted, not in cheers, but in something softer. Relief. Restoration. Neighbors came up to us. Offered hugs. Apologies. Quiet confessions of guilt for staying silent too long. Tom approached and extended his hand. I'm sorry, Elena. We failed you. I shook his hand, not for him, but for the symbol it carried. We're still here, I said. That's what matters. As we stepped outside, Kinsley looked up at the evening sky. It was turning pink. Calm. Safe. She reached into her bag and pulled out a single flyer. Crumpled but intact. Can I put this in a mailbox? She asked. I looked at her, brave, healing, still full of hope. Yes, baby. This one's yours. She rolled over, opened the mailbox gently, and slid the flyer in with a smile. It read, Thank you for believing in me. Kinsley Brooks, it's been 3 months. The scar on Kinsley's hand is fading, but the strength it left behind, that's permanent. Peggy moved out a week after the vote. A moving truck showed up early on a Tuesday morning, and by sunset, her front yard was empty, just an overwatered lawn and a mailbox that now felt like a closed chapter. No one waved goodbye. No one helped her pack. The neighborhood changed after that. Not in the way you'd expect. There weren't parades or public apologies. But there was softness. People started slowing down when they walked past her home. Some stopped to say hello. Others brought books for Kinsley's school drive. Late, sure, but genuine. The HOA bulletin board now includes a new line in every notice. Please remember, all residents, regardless of ability, are equally valued members of our community. And that flyer Kinsley had slipped into the mailbox before the showdown, it didn't just sit there. It was framed by Jason and posted at the entrance of the community clubhouse. Thank you for believing in me, Kinsley Brooks. Kinsley has started going outside again. Slowly, carefully. She asked if we could plant a small garden near the mailbox. At first, I hesitated. That corner held too much pain, too many memories. But then I saw her sketchbook. She'd already drawn the whole thing. Tulips, daisies, a wooden sign that read, This corner grows kindness. So we did it. Together. She chose the colors. I dug the holes. Neighbors donated seedlings. And one Saturday morning, as we stood back to admire the patch of blooming color, Kinsley turned to me and asked, Do you think she's still mad? Who? Peggy. I paused. Thought about it. Maybe I said, But that's not our burden anymore. She nodded. Then, with that same smile she used to flash back when we first moved in, all heart, all light, she added, Maybe she'll learn how to grow something too. That night, as I tucked her into bed, she whispered, Thanks for not giving up on me. I kissed her forehead, blinking back tears. No, Kinsley, thank you for not giving up on being kind, even when people didn't deserve it. Because in the end, it wasn't the lawyer or the HOA vote or the neighborhood turning on a tyrant that changed everything. It was a little girl with a broken hand, a fierce heart, and a flyer. Life settled down after that. Kinsley's garden kept growing. The HOA meetings turned boring again, just the way they were meant to be. And for a while, it felt like peace had finally returned to Larkridge Estates. But peace doesn't always last. One chilly autumn morning, I opened the mailbox and found a plain white envelope inside. No stamp, no return address. Inside was a single piece of paper. Typed, neat, cold. You made quite the show. But some people never forget. Some rules are meant to be kept. Watch yourself. No signature, no name, but the scent on the envelope? Faint, familiar, lavender and bleach. The same smell Peggy's house always had. I stared at it, heartbeat rising, not in fear, but in that same quiet fury I'd learned to live with. Later that day, Kinsley came home from school humming. She handed me a crumpled piece of construction paper. It was a new flyer. Kinsley's Saturday Story Garden, bring a book, share a smile. I hugged her tightly and whispered, Let them watch. Because this time we wouldn't be scared. This time we weren't alone. And if they came back, we'd be ready. If this story moved you, if it made you angry, made you cry, or made you hope, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Because here on HOA Denied Access, we share real stories of families like mine who dared to stand up against injustice hiding behind picket fences and HOA rulebooks. Envelope with arrow, leave a comment below. Have you ever dealt with an abusive HOA or a neighbor like Peggy? Your voice matters. Your story could be the next one we tell. Eyes and remember, sometimes the smallest act of courage starts with something as simple as a flyer. Speech balloon like, share, and hit that bell icon. Because next time, the war might not be at my door. It might be at yours. Welcome to HOA Denied Access. We don't knock, we expose.